And Edwina, just for more context, as I already kind of gave you, but these chats are very unguided, and they all are happening in the moment, through the now. Whatever wants to come up tends to come up, and that's intentional, so that the unknown itself can be the guide, and we're just the conduits of what wants to be expressed. So what I would ask, and the honor here, is just to aim to be as authentic as is possible, which I know you are, but in the sense of, if you feel those ego blocks coming up, or those walls, defenses, see if you can lean into them and break through them through this chat, as a way to facilitate your healing journey. And that's the aim of this series, the Share Your Story. It's to empower your voice and your journey by giving you the floor to open up and share whatever you want, whatever comes to heart about your path. And hopefully that serves you in a form of catharsis, as a way to accelerate your healing, facilitate your healing, and just allow you to come out of this feeling hopefully a bit lighter and cleansed in a way. But with all that said, there's no agenda or particular aim. So who knows what will happen, right? That's kind of the underlying essence of it. And, it's really going to be all about you, and you. And through that, it will be about us, if that makes sense. Because at the end of the day, when you strip away the you, as in the Edwina, and we look at the naked you, we're all the same. So with that, let's just dive into it and see where it goes. So I know from meeting you, and for everyone who's tuning in here, maybe I should start with prefacing that Edwina is somebody I met when I was on the beginnings of my spiritual adventures, and I was taking a trip with my buddy Raj to the heartland of New Mexico, and we waddled our way into Taos, which is this beautiful pueblo with these little clay huts and shops and whatnot. It really blew my mind. But I randomly walked into a store, and Edwina was, I think you were hosting for the day or something for a friend, and immediately was just absolutely consumed by your presence. It was a light that I could not deny, and it really just moved me in a way that is hard to describe. So, it's a true pleasure and an honor to be speaking with you again in context of this journey. It really feels like it's what was meant to be, from meeting, so long ago, randomly in a clay shop. But welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So look, what I think I'd love to do to begin is just hear a bit more about you. You can, share with the community a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do. Well, who you are is a loaded question. Maybe we start with the worldly stuff, keep it more shallow and practical to begin. Just a bit about you and where you're from, what you do, that type of stuff, to set the stage.
Well, that was a beautiful intro. Thank you, Cam. I was just at the Pueblo today for feast day, so we went there early in the morning, and all the men are racing. And if anyone's ever read Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, the part of the world where I'm from is the part in that book where everybody goes to look at the way humans used to be, where they still give birth naturally and age and all of that. It's a fascinating book because, you know, in that book, everybody has found ways to not age and to not have to give birth. But there's this one part of the world where things are still done the old way. And so that's very much kind of where I'm from and where I'm from is like. We recently had a woman from the East Coast visiting here. And that day I was at the Hanuman temple, which I hope if you ever come back, you also go there, because that's another really special place that we have. And she said, wow, women aren't trying to stay young here. Like, I don't know if you can tell all my gray hair. That's why she was telling me this, because I'm 38, but I stopped dyeing my hair just as kind of a allowing myself to be myself. And so she was coming from a place where the cultural expression of women is very much about like getting interventions with their aging and that sort of thing. And she was like, all of you have wrinkles and gray hair. What's going on? So I again felt that like feeling of the Brave New World perspective of like this place where I'm from in the world is extra special. So I'm a therapist and I've been working in the schools since the spring. And so I've been seeing how much the children here thrive when they have a connection to the agricultural lineage here, the agricultural traditions, like we keep acequias and irrigate the fields and stuff like that. And when the kids are inside, there's so many behavioral issues where I'm called in, and then we take them outside and they get to connect with the land and they just blossom and they just thrive and they get along with each other and they don't fight. And so I'm thinking a lot just about like the time in the world that we're alive and like what it is that we're doing, like how we're contributing to the expansion of consciousness during this phase of human maturation. And so I have a little girl and she's almost 6, and she is Dr. Shefali Tusberry, she's one of my favorite parenting psychologists, and she says to look to your children as your gurus because they're constantly reflecting what's going on in your subconscious. And so harnessing that wisdom as a mother has been a huge part of my journey, like to really be able to see her as a teacher has been a great gift to me. And then her father, my fair weather husband, I haven't seen much of him over the past few years, is in a federal prison. And so he's on his own awakening journey while being really mired in a very masculine darkness, which has been also such a great teacher to me to be able to learn about that experience that's so alien to me, because I really exist in a very feminine form in this life and really thrive in a very feminine expression. Like my whole life has been like sewing and gardening and like living a very traditional feminine style of life. So I consider my husband and my daughter to be some of my greatest teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like that saying, the world is not here to make us happy, it's here to make us conscious. Everything is a vehicle of liberation that serves as that foundational fuel to help you free yourself from yourself in the service of consciousness ascension. So absolutely, relationships, right, are the best vehicles of liberation because everything's a mirror that's revealing the egoic residue that you continue to carry within yourself that needs love, needs liberation, needs healing. So, this is where you are now, right? And in some ways, it's just looking at decades of your journey, and that's led you to this very moment, where you're, a therapist, you're serving your higher purpose. It seems at this point in your journey, Edwina, you've really come into what feels and seems and is interpreted, or I should say received, as energetic alignment, and really being in tune with yourself, with the universe, with everything, really, in terms of just knowingness about that connectedness that's driving the knowingness. But let's now go back and look at the awakening journey, your awakening journey, from the beginnings, as you want to kind of point to what that beginning is and how it's kind of led to this now, however many years, decades later. So let's start by just having you answer the question, what is the awakening journey to you? What does it mean, the awakening journey?
Well, I think that answer would change from day to day. I was thinking about how when you were saying looking at the experiences of our lives and the relationships of our lives as a vehicle of liberation, the first thing that I thought of was, oh God, to be able to look at life like that. What a privilege that is, because there's so many people in my community, in my life here in this crazy part of the world, that are just entangled in survival mode. Like they can't extricate themselves from just the basics of survival, the day to day. And so to ask them to take that perspective would be a tall order, So in that way, like I'm speaking, of socioeconomic class and that sort of thing. And like, I feel like growing up in a very poor household, in a very poor community, like a lot of poverty surrounding me, what enabled me to have the opportunity that I have to be on this journey, to be sitting here with you, had a lot to do with having been born to seekers. So like my great-grandmother, Edwina, whom I'm named after, she was a relative of Emerson. So I loved your piece on Emerson. And
wait, Mr. Ralph Waldo Emerson?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to interject just because he's my favorite person.
I know. I was so happy when you did that piece. I was like, word, that's been one of my great influences too. So as a child, my parents kind of already had this perspective of like, form is not the be all and end all of this story. Form is not what's governing our journey here. And consequently, they gave me a great deal of freedom and kind of said, go forth and see what it is that your soul is here to find. And that was a tremendous gift. And so as a child, I didn't go to school much, and I played outside all the time. And I felt so in love with the world. I felt I felt my soul's love just pouring out of me. I was just completely enamored of existence. And I was grateful. I was so grateful as a child to have the mother that I have and to live in the place where I live. And I didn't know like that I was poor or anything. I thought like I had it made, you know?
Mm.
And so then I started expanding more into the world and recognizing more hardship and taking other people's perspectives into account, like hearing, you know, your dad's a drunk asshole and you're poor and you're this, that, and the other thing. And then I was like, oh, really? You know, like maybe I should take some heed to what they're saying, you know, and start to have a more negative perspective of life. And then I, you know, took to substance use, as so many young people do. And then I, with my first husband, when I was 20, I moved to San Francisco and I lived in Bayview Hunters Point, which at the time in 2005 or whatever was a really hard neighborhood. And his family had lived there for a long time. So we went to live there with them. And there I became a witness to all sorts of darknesses that I hadn't really engaged with before.
Mm.
And then I came home and my beloved little sister passed away. And she was like my tightest human up until that point. Like we were, you know, in existential psychology, existential philosophies, there's that concept of your symbols having been written. And so she and I, all our symbols were written together. We shared all the symbology of form, all our stories, all our jokes, all our meanings. So to lose her, a huge piece of me just died. And so at that point, I'm like 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, totally unable to find the light again, totally unable to say thank you to source, to consciousness, to creator, to love, and really playing out my demons, like giving my demons arenas to battle in the physical form. So like drama and darkness and substance abuse and nighttime and cars and motorcycles and drugs and alcohol and smoking and like all, I gave myself to that world for a while because I was so much like, how could my sister be gone? What am I doing here? And then I started to come back to a concept of living in the light because I had a dream where my little sister came down and said, stop living in revenge of my life and start living in celebration of it. And there were various other signs and callings at that time. So I was kind of like, fine, I'll find my way. And at this point, I was getting my undergrad, and I owe a lot to the professors that I had at that time. And then in my early 30s, how old was I? I had to be 31. I started my master's at Southwestern.
Mm.
And Southwestern in Santa Fe is a magical school.
Yeah.
Their motto is transformation through consciousness, or consciousness transformation, something like that. Anyway, they're true to their word, and it's really been one of the greatest gifts during my journey.
Is this where you're getting the consciousness masters in what is it?
Yeah.
Specific consciousness and spirituality, or?
So I got the counseling with a focus in consciousness. I was trying to sell you on the masters in consciousness because you've got this.
I'm very drawn to it. I'm very drawn to the idea of pursuing consciousness academically, but I'm always then reminded that you can't get a degree in wisdom. So then I'm like, well, should I do it? But I do think that there's so much practical value of being able to learn how to integrate consciousness into the world, right, into our daily lives. So there's certainly a role for it. I just need to, I guess, put out my spiritual ego and get, be willing to kind of invest in something. But I'm also, just things are a little busy at the moment. So it's in my back burner, but the program sounds incredible. And it seems like an absolute spiritualist dream.
Yeah, they really make you do the work on yourself, which is why it's so transformational.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm deeply grateful.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but keep going. You were then, so would you like to keep going there? Was there, I feel like I interrupted your stream of consciousness, or is that led you to the now?
Yeah, I think that's about now.
From now to now. There we go. Wow. Well, first off, I didn't know all of those things that happened in your life, which is why this is such an invaluable experience to share together. So thank you for revealing and opening up. Was there a darkest moment in your across that entire span that you could point to that kind of was the waking up moment, if you will? Or how did you come to know that you were not what was going on in the surface of your life, but how did you come to connect with that deeper essence that indwells within all life as life, in the sense of connecting to source, connecting to God, love, these deeper indwelling states of being? How did you come into connectedness in that way?
Well, it was more of a remembering for me. And what I've really come to realize is, there's not good and evil, light and dark. There's just light and the absence of light. Like the further away we get from the light, the darker it is. And so I feel like learning about being really far away from the light was a really crucial part of my soul's education. And I'm 8 years clean and sober because the darkness started rejecting me. Like it wasn't so much a conscious choice as a propulsion. Like it was like, no, you know better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, you may remember this about me too, Edwina, but because when I was in Taos, I guess at that point I was sober as well myself. So, and I've continued on that path as well. So I'm following your footsteps and just in your draft, I guess, if you will. But I get what you mean by that too, because when you are rising in consciousness, you're ascending back home, you're coming back home, right? You're out on your road trip essentially, and like now you're coming back home to the motherland, and that's an ascension of energy, that ascension in consciousness, which is an ascension in vibration. That vibration I felt when I met you for the first time. It's undeniable. And addiction doesn't vibrate there. It doesn't exist there, because addiction only exists in the unconscious state, because mindfulness is the cure to the mindlessness of addiction. And if you're mindful, meaning you're conscious and aware, addiction cannot exist, because addiction is simply automation. It is habit loops and unobserved behavior running on autopilot, and it continues to happen. So when you become aware, which is the essence of the spiritual awakening journey, you're regaining control, you're regaining agency, and addictions just melt off of you.
Yeah.
As happened to me, has happened to you. And that's why addiction is such a massive focus for me in Awakenpedia in terms of helping people, because I see it so clearly, you know. Yeah. But all of that is to say then that it was more for you than a gradual process of remembrance by going, you know, in and out of different moments or times, periods of being more connected to the light and remembering who you are, and then forgetting who you are for some time, and then remembering again and forgetting again, and then continuously or gradually coming into a more constant state of remembrance, so it seems, so that you're essentially forgetting less. Is that fair? Would you describe it that way, or am I kind of capturing it appropriately?
Yeah, that does sound right. And another big piece of my experience in this is compassion. So learning the wisdom of compassion for others and for myself has been key to my ability to continue on this path. So, for example, in that work of like giving my demons power, I learned about the journey of the process of inviting them to the table. Like, so for example, the demon of my long-standing need for male validation. So like that was one of the ones that like had its hooks in me and haunted me. And I was like, always like, why is this such a big unconscious aspect of me? Why does this have such a hold on me? And so that act of like trying to push it away, trying to overcome it was futile. And it was in the moment of inviting it in and having deep compassion for it and asking it what it knew and asking it what it was there to teach me, and embracing it and striving to understand it from a non-judgmental, compassionate place, that I was then liberated from it. And that's been like one of the big ones in my journey. There's many others. And that action of just completely switching my perspective of things and approaching things from a different way has been one of the most liberating tools for me on this journey.
Yeah, it's so true and so powerful to bring that loving kindness and compassion to yourself on this journey, and that's where you can, you know, really appreciate all of it, the whole roller coaster of life itself. You just can have fun riding it when you know, you don't take it all so personally and judge yourself for your own humaneness.
Yeah. And others too, like we're in this time when there's so much duality and everyone's saying all those people are wrong and what are they thinking? And so in my school, we did this whole piece on the need to be right, and like how much of a hold does that need to be right have on you? And that was a huge chunk of liberation in my work right there. So like I was able to be like, oh, I don't need to be right. I'm free. You know, it's like another piece of attaining like this deep, sustaining level of freedom that now I'm totally hooked on, you know? And Thich Nhat Hanh also really helped me with that one. He tells a story where he says, you know, there's a beautiful maiden on the coasts of Somalia just getting water and enjoying her day. And a Somali pirate comes to shore and rapes her. And her whole life is shattered. And everybody, all of us, you and me and anybody listening to that story, is like, God, that poor girl. Like, we have so much compassion for her and empathy for her, and we're like pissed. And Teek's like, but what about that pirate? From the time that he was a little boy, the only thing he knew that he would be able to gain power through was to be a pirate. And for every man that he's killed, every woman that he's hurt, every transgression he's enacted on this realm, on this plane, another piece of his soul has gone into hiding. And, you know, another demon has found a place within him. And that's a big but traditional belief where I'm from is susto, soul loss. So every trauma is a piece of us that gets stuck in that story, in that time, in that place. And so to de-traumatize ourselves is a calling back, a calling ourselves to wholeness. Healing is a becoming of wholeness, calling ourselves back from all those places where we left a piece of ourselves. So when we see the person mired in the most suffering and causing the most harm and pain, you know, I can see that not very much of them is inhabiting themselves at this point. Only a sliver of themselves remains, and the rest of them is trapped in other times and other places, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Trapped in the mind, the conditioned mind. Yeah, I love the way you speak about it. It really is resonates. You resonate deeply with me, and you know, I think that's what I realized. I recognized as soon as we met, you know, that we saw the world very similarly in that way. But why this is so fun to do for me is because we get to examine, well, what were the roads that we took to meet in the middle? You know, how did we each experience our own little paths parallelly to come to see the world in such a similar way with such different backgrounds, different environments, different upbringings, different things. And it's just so beautiful to realize that regardless of whatever road you're taking, it all leads to the same place, leads home. All roads lead home. So it's just fun. It's fun to, you know, hear your road and to see that made true in practice. It's really cool. What would you say, Edwina, was the most challenging part of this journey for you? What has been the hardest part? And I know that's an open-ended, vague question, but is there something that comes to mind when I ask this, which is, what aspect of this awakening journey has challenged you the most? What do you find most challenging about it? Maybe it's in the now too, right?
Well, I think that my awakening journey is most challenged in relationship, and that specifically my relationships with men have facilitated my darkest expressions. And I think that I knew that from the time I was a child, that one of the things that I came here this time around to really investigate and work on had a lot to do with the complementary aspects of the masculine and feminine, and how in this time that we're alive, they're really, like, the masculine and the feminine is really put at odds with each other, rather than recognizing them as being complementary forces on the earth plane.
Yeah. So maybe we can just dig a little deeper there in context of the nature of how your relationships with men have challenged you and maybe continue to challenge you. But why do you think that is? What exactly is it about those relationships that are challenging you?
I don't know, because I don't feel particularly challenged at this moment. So right now I'm kind of like, was that a statement based on previous experience and now I'm facing something else? Or like, it's hard to pinpoint, but I think that I don't know. I think it's a big piece of what human consciousness is working on right now. I think like our rhythms are changing. I think that our rhythms of being human are expanding into a new phase of human consciousness. And I think that there's a reason that my journey in this lifetime is so expressively feminine, and that it's where it hits that wall, where it meets resistance in the physical form and in the journey of this lifetime for me personally, is with like hyper masculine expression. So there's something about it. And, you know, I've come a long way through all these various expressions of spirituality. Like in my childhood, it was very much a primal and pagan expression of spirituality. So I was like raised with all these beliefs about the earth and like goddess energy and things like that. And so when I was a child, the message I got from Source was, you're going to have to bring goddess medicine to men who really need it. And so I kind of lived that out. And I had a pretty witchy expression in my early 20s, late teens at that time. And the men that I loved at that time were my first husband and the man that followed him were both so machismo, like the classic, like, I mean, in this part of the world, it's Hispanic, but this way of being exists in a lot of parts of the world, of just like really being in charge of things as men. And so they kind of shamed me for my way of being. And I stopped being that way. And I chose a more patriarchal expression of spirituality for a while. And then in my spiritual journey, I've come to now a point where I like really look around and sort of all things are an expression of spiritual devotion for me. So like right now I'm sitting at my mom's sewing machine that she's had my whole life, you know, and it just feels like such the feeling of nostalgia is a devotional feeling. Like it feels like I'm here just to appreciate God's creation. And so that makes me think about how demonized hypermasculinity is in our culture right now. Like at my school, everybody is really bemoaning, you know, patriarchal expressions and the way that men express themselves. And there's all this talk of toxic masculinity. And I'm the only one, male, female, or other, that raises my hand in class and says, but wait, men's ways of being are completely valid, and their ways of suffering and expressing pain are completely valid. And like people look at me and assume that I would have a very feminist belief system because of who my aunts and everybody is that has raised me. And yeah, I took women's studies and everything, and it's all totally resonant with me, but for the part of demonizing the masculine. That is the part where they lose me. That is the part where I'm like, no, we're in this together. And if we're going to put the weight of our darkness on one aspect of our human expression, we're not going to be able to do the vital work of consciousness expansion that we're supposed to be doing right now. And so I think that's a big part of it. I think that the suffering that I've had to do in the deep love of the men that I have loved so deeply is about being able to expand that compassion and share it with others. Like all those men who are in prison, and like I work in a recovery center too, and there's all these court mandated men and men that, you know, are so hard, and like they have like all the tattoos and everything. And then I sit with them and I say to them, you know, what did God put you here for? You know, God loves you so much. And they start weeping. And I ask them, you know, what does this tattoo right here mean? You know, how many men did you have to shank in prison? And they start weeping, and they like feel so seen, and they feel so heard. And our culture's not giving them that. And it's going to continue being a point of pain in our people, in our shared consciousness, if we can't meet it with loving compassion. If we keep shaming and blaming an aspect of our human expression and of our human consciousness, it's not going to be able to heal. And so I'm seeing it in the schools with the little boys. He's such a bad kid. It's his fault. He hit another kid. The bad kid. Shame, shame, blame, blame. And then I'm seeing it in the recovery center. Like, oh, well, he did this and he did that. And shame, shame, blame, blame. We got to watch him. We got to be suspicious of him. We can't see him as being in his truth, in his authentic expression. And the moment I come in with that perspective of like, wait a second, what'll happen if we do see him in his authentic expression? Magic happens.
Yeah. This is why you're one of the pure ones, Edwina. This is why you're so brilliant, because you see it for what it is. You're emanating from the truth, and it's so powerful and so important, because you're 100% right. But you're right because it's true, not right or wrong in the duality, polarity sense of judgment. But it's like, yes, of course, we cannot. The taking feminism, not to linger on it, but just looking at the ideal of feminism. Of course, the underlying ideal is to be equal, and that we are equal. And yes, of course, we are all equal. All God's children, all brothers and sisters here as one interconnected web of pure consciousness. But as soon as you then begin to make it, in some feminist culture or ways of identifying with it, it becomes a mental position, and then it becomes us versus them. And now, as you're just said, you know, it becomes a blame game and demonizing masculinity, and then that defeats the underlying ideal, the underlying purpose, and it takes the love out of it. And then we get nowhere, and then it's just a different form of ego and a different way of fighting each other. So you the way you see it and speak to it, and the efforts that you're contributing here are just so brilliant. And to be doing it in such challenging environments too, speaks to the strength of your soul. And it's really admirable, and I just want you to know that, if someone hasn't already told you. But, you know, working within the recovery, prison, incarceration networks, educating children, I mean, you're doing true God's work here, and it's a divine responsibility. And, you know, just such an honor that you're a part of this community with us, to be able to contribute, to share your insight, because your insight emanates from a very deep place, right? You're very extreme depths of connection. So anyway, I just wanted to take a second there to affirm you as well, about, looking at your journey and the work you're doing to contribute to the consciousness collective and expansion here. Would you say, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you so much. And like you said at the beginning of this interview, that we're just conduits of consciousness. That's not really how I feel about the work that I do. I just try to keep myself that hollow bone, like the less snags and hooks I have inside of me, the more easily consciousness can flow through me. And so that's why I've been gifted this awakening journey in the place that I am. It's a gift that's been given to me so that source consciousness can use me as a conduit, as a messenger in these places, so that everywhere I go, I can open my heart, because my heart, every time it breaks for things that have happened in my life and people that I meet, and the world breaks us, I consciously pray for my heart to be broken open, not hardened in bitterness with scar tissue. And so through that practice and through this gift of being able to be on this journey, I'm able to come to my work and just say, I'm not the healer. I'm not the great bearer of wisdom. I get to witness this person. I get to be a holy witness as they release whatever stories they're carrying out into the universe. I get to witness that. And source gets to flow through me. I pray before I meet every person and just say, please help me show up for this person the way they need me to today. It's not about, I'm a therapist with an excellent education and I have read all these books and let me tell you what I know. It's about like, no, you're the expert of your journey.
Yeah.
What an honor that I get to watch.
Yeah. I see it the same exact way for my own contributions and how I am a facilitator here in just my own context, but I see it the same exact way. And it's so, what I love about truth is how paradoxical it is, which is, in this context, you're valuable, you're able to heal by getting out of the way. Like, you become helpful when you kind of remove yourself, meaning the Edwina, right? The person and the persona, when you let go of those and kind of just like stop identifying with the form, that formless, pure consciousness, source energy that can flow right through you because the channel is clear. And so that's when you can become the conduit. That's when you are the conduit. And that's when the magic happens. It's hard to, of course, describe with words, but it's, it when it's happening and if it's happening. And I know that is exactly what's going on with you so clearly. So, and it's just such a beautiful thing to witness the witnesser, if that makes sense. To see you for how I see myself and all of us as one. It's incredible. And yeah. Let me ask you one last thing here before we wrap up. If there's any advice that you could give to your fellow travelers on this pathless path with you, pilgrims on the pilgrimage, what would you offer them? What would you want to say?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind how finite this form is, how fleeting all these experiences are, all these sensations, and that we came here for them. So like there's this big message in spirituality to kind of like rise above things, to cast off the ego, to cast off the shackles of our identifications with form. But I think those are some of the key things we came here for. If we can participate fully and mindfully in this bizarre flow of form and spirit that we are as humans, I think that's where our greatest learning is. So I remember when I was a child, I was like bemoaning the condition of suffering, you know, I was like, Mom, why do people have to suffer so much? And like, you know, this doesn't feel right. And she said, you know, one of the main things we came here to this physical form for, to feel so isolated within these flesh vehicles for, is to feel the sun on our skin. And it just kind of like simplified things for me in this really powerful way. And so now like I'm able to be in this dance with my body where I'm like, I have a crick in my neck and I'm like, ow, take a painkiller, you know? Or I'm like, oh, someday my soul is going to miss being able to feel pain. Someday my soul is going to miss the way my eyes are beginning to wrinkle. Someday my soul is going to miss this, you know? Mm-hmm. Someday my soul is going to think back on the wonders of goosebumps and shivers as I rue the winter coming on, you know? And like with egoic expression, you know, we're so quick to want to kind of be above that, be free of it. But I'm like, wait a second. What is the ego actually trying to teach me? Like, why is the ego always wanting to take the wheel and drive this life? What does it want for me? And then I see it as a teacher rather than as something holding me back, you know? And again, I feel freer. I feel freer in this form. And I feel freer to like actually recognize that perhaps my soul relishes the chance to have a authentic physical expression, to dance with physical form in these ways that we only can for this, you know, brief, tenuous time. And then it gets kind of exciting, like rather than worries and hurt feelings and physical pains being a great burden on my journey, I'm able to harness their teaching capacity and move more deeply into being a part of this creation that we get to play in and our souls get to simulate manifestation in for just this brief time, you know? Like I just turned 38 and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's like a third of my life I've already lived. Mm-hmm. This is like a thrilling chance to just be fully Edwina, you know? And then I have the rest of time to again join the oneness of source. And then, you know, whatever work I do while I'm in this form is a contribution to a greater expansion of consciousness. So like my ability to engage fully in what's happening right here and now is an act of service.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I'm just sitting with what you're saying. Beautiful words. Really, truly powerful. And what I sense, Edwina, that you're pointing to here, which I also intuitively sense, is the direction of the New Age, where this entire collective consciousness shift is heading, as how it manifests in practice in the physical world, is the art of living as a human being, part being, part human, to be able to dance the dance, simultaneously balancing living within these two dimensions at one time. It's a challenge, right? That it's an incredible challenge. It's the greatest challenge of being alive. But it's also the reason. It's the purpose is to be able to fully experience our form without clinging to it. So to live and feel and experience, to play, to love, laugh, dance, all of these wonders of living, of life, without needing any of it, without clinging to it, without having any hooks in it. And that's how you fully appreciate it, right? And it takes a clear mind to be able to do that, in the sense that, and that's where I fundamentally fully agree with you as well. Just like intuitively, I see it the same way, that the ego is our teacher. The ego is not an enemy; it's our friend here. We can learn to dance with it, so that we can just have a wonderful experience. But it's through that befriending process that the ego becomes less dysfunctional, becomes less toxic for us, so that it stops controlling us all the time in our behaviors.
Well, the ego is the part of us that gets all of those hooks, that gets all of those attachments.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it's a great teacher, because we're like, oh, that hook, it hurts, but it's love, ultimately. That hook is just my egoic experience of love, like they say, we have like pain and grief and all these things. They're a price that we pay to love as deeply as we love. And so the moment that we bring it back to that core solid truth, it's like, oh, I'm just here loving the fuck out of, sorry.
You're good.
Loving so much the this expression of consciousness, all of this beauty that pure consciousness has brought into form, all of this madness that consciousness has brought into form. Like, I am just appreciating it so immensely that sometimes it cripples me. Or an aspect of me, the egoic aspect.
Yeah. And it's such a powerful way to just to guide your philosophy of life, and to live by this and through this, because what we're also pointing to here is the idea that even when your surface life is crumbling and conditions are souring, the dream is becoming a nightmare, and you want to end everything, and nothing's right, nothing's working, you're broken, so it seems, or you feel. At the same time, you can connect and feel that underlying peace that never left, was always there throughout it all. And that's what makes the storm bearable. That's what makes the surface tolerable. It's why you can successfully lead your way through it and get your way out of it without actually crumbling, and perhaps at some point in the journey with full great appreciation and gratitude for it. How can you be grateful for all this suffering and all the catastrophe in your life? And that's when you know, when you're really getting into the now, when you're able to see everything as a gift, everything as the present. Well, I think that's a really good place to wrap up. Edwina, is there anything else that you would like to say about the journey, about anything at all? Just parting words?
No, that was wonderful, deep sustenance of connection, the sort of thing I live for. So thank you. And thank you for continuously inviting yourself and others to participate in the flow of consciousness and the present moment.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's so exciting to be in the present moment. Like when you really just are like at the grocery store and you become fully present and you like look at the person next to you in the eye and fully like engage on a soul level. You're like, oh, yes, the awakening journey, man. This is where it's at.
Yeah.
Love you, old lady I've never seen before. It makes life exciting.
For sure. And that's what I felt with you. I didn't know it at the time necessarily. That was towards the beginning innings, I'd say, of like this whole entire shift that's been going on for myself. But I know that's what was my soul's realization and recognition for you. I was recognizing your Emerson. I think that's what it was. Your bloodline.
Well, you were so funny. You were like leapt right into like, so wait, you just walked in there and you were like right away like, who are your spiritual teachers? What are you doing? Have you read this, that, and the other? And I was like, word, I totally have. Like, what are you doing? Just going around the country asking this to everybody? Like,
pretty much.
Like, this is my dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about the resonance. I love that feeling.
Amazing. Well, it was such a nice time, Edwina, to catch up with you and to see you again after so long. And I'd love to find a way to make this more of a regular occurrence, not to share your story, but just in the sense of being able to, spend more time together, because I think that you're just such a beautiful soul and you're one of the realest of the real. And, your presence is of such power that it really can help serve this world in magnificent ways. And I mean that truly and deeply. So would love to help facilitate that for you in any way possible as we both continue on these journeys. As Awakenpedia continues to grow and evolve, more doors are going to open. Things will happen. Whatever happens is going to happen. But your soul is so pure, it has to be seen. And I'd like to make that happen, help it make that happen even further than it already has.
Thank you. Well, it's truly an honor. And again, the serendipitous way of our meeting, it's like, well, obviously we're going to continue to do work in this world because we've been asked to. We don't really, live these kinds of lives and not do what we're asked by the universe. So,
yeah,
to be continued.
To be continued.